Shalom, everybody. Welcome to this week's journey through Torah. We're in the wilderness, still continuing through the wilderness today. We're in Numbers chapter 8 through 12, and we're going to cover a few things in here. We're going to talk about just the first couple verses in chapter 8, and we'll cover a little bit in 11 and 12. But the point I want to bring out here today is talking about life in the wilderness and what happens, and is there something that we can do? Don't forget the reason why Yahweh brought them out into the wilderness. So he brought them out of Mitzrayim, he freed them, he redeemed them, and now he brings them into the wilderness. Now, when we think of the wilderness, again, we always think of like a very harsh climate, a very harsh atmosphere, hard life. You're going to have to really struggle to survive out here, right? But understand it's in the wilderness that Yahweh brought them to the mountain to reveal himself to them and to teach them that they have to trust him. They have to build this relationship on trust. They knew that he redeemed them. They knew that he set them free. But could they trust Yahweh with their lives, with their daily living and how to go about doing that? They had to learn to trust Yahweh, and they had to learn to walk in his ways. Now, when we're learning new things, how many of us respond very well to learning new things? I mean, I'm not just talking about something you know a little bit about. I mean, something that is completely new to you. It takes time, doesn't it? Now, understand, all Israel was in this situation together. They all had to learn to trust and to follow Yahweh. So it's understandable that when your life gets turned upside down and everything is completely different than what you think, you're going to be uncomfortable. That's not the problem. The problem is, how do we handle it? What do we do with it? Right? What do we do with when life is turned upside down and it's uncomfortable, but Yahweh is revealing himself to us? Do we continue to trust him? Okay. And no one ever said it was going to be easy. He said he would give you hope in this. But again, in the wilderness, we have to be careful of not just how we think, but we have to be careful of what we say about what we think. We have to be careful of our behavior, our actions, and be mindful of our relationships with one another. We truly do have an impact on each other, and we can affect how another person views or sees something that is happening in their life. So we have to make sure that we do have let's just say a positive spin, a God outlook on what is happening in our life. We need to be focused on Yahweh, his word, and the things that he has told us and instructed us for these times, right? Well, we see time and time again in the wilderness that wasn't the case, okay? And we often look back and think harshly about these people in the wilderness. All they could do is grumble and complain. I think, truth be told, if we were there, many of us would be in the same situation. We like to think that we wouldn't be, but we would be, okay? So we're going to learn a few things here about our conversation, about our speech, about how we handle life in these areas, right? And what should our outlook be? And it's interesting because we're going to relate this to the menorah, at least starting off with. We're going to relate this to the menorah and what happens when the priest was to go in, when Aaron was to go in to kindle the menorah. Well, we're going to take this and run with this for a minute and then talk about a few other things. All right. So let's start with Numbers 8 and verses 1 through 3. Adonai said to Moshe, "Tell Aaron that when you set up the lamps, the 7 lamps are to cast their light forward in front of the menorah." Aaron did this, and he lit its lamp so as to give light in front of the menorah as Adonai had ordered Moshe. The thing we're going to see here is when you go up. Behaalotcha is when you go up, or when you kindle, or when you light, all of these things, because the word that's used there, it can mean all those, and we'll cover that in just a second. But the idea is when you're going up to the menorah, you're essentially looking at the flames going up. You are ascending to go up. You have to go up to light them, right? And this is the same word that's used, Behaalotcha. The word is olah, is to go up, to ascend, or to burn, or to the fire. It's the same word that's used for the burnt offering that was given on the altar. So it's something that ascends, or something that is consumed with the fire. Now, when you're approaching it and you're going up, it is to remind us that as we are approaching, we are to look up. Okay, we are to keep our focus upward, in other words, toward the heavens toward Yahweh, right? And as well as we must ascend to go up to light it. So we're not to remain in thinking of this world and the ways of it. We must put ourselves in a place to go up, allow ourselves to be pulled up into his presence to do this, right? I know it's a little bit in here, but I want us to think outside the box here today, okay? So when it says that you're lighting the cups on the menorah, it says all the flames, all the light is supposed to shine forward. Now, literally it says to shine in its face. All right. So again, what does it make you think of when I say light to your face, right? The Aaronic benediction, right? Numbers chapter 6 that we learned, where it says, the Lord make his face shine upon you, be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. That's something we need to think about. When we're approaching him, we need to look up and be mindful that it's his light that shines on us, and that we need to walk in that light. Now, put this also in the context of that the menorah in much literature is called the light of the world. Now, what did Yeshua say? John 8:12, Yeshua said, I am the light of the world. So when we approach, we must look up. We can't be down and just continually looking down. No, we must look up. Lift up your head and look to him, because he is the one that we need to look toward, to walk in the wilderness, to live life when it gets hard, to go through all these things. We have to be mindful of these things. And that's why Yahweh has given us many reminders over and over again to follow his word, like Shabbat, like the Moedim, like the Tzitziot on the garments, right? All of these things are reminders for us that we are to keep focused on him. We're to be mindful of him, because that is how we're going to get through the wilderness and continue to walk into the promise, okay? So when we approach him, we need to inspect ourselves. And that's what we're looking at. We need to be thankful for what Yahweh has given us. What I have here is just a couple thoughts for us. Do we always seem like we want something else out of life, from relationships or from our job? Do we think that life would be better if only I could, whatever, fill in the blank? Life would be better if only I could have this or do this job, or not do that or do the other thing, or whatever it is. If we're constantly looking for something else for fulfillment, we will never be satisfied. That my joy is in the next destination. If I could only get to this point, then life would be good. When you get there, you're going to see, well, life ain't good. So what's the next thing I need, right? So we have to be mindful not to go that route. So are we addicted to our ideas of our destination or our goals is the only thing that makes us happy? Because like we said, there will always be another thing. There will always be something else that we have to try to reach for. We need to learn that it is in Yahweh that we can be fulfilled and have this joy and have these other things, and be content with what he has given us. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't set goals. This doesn't mean that you don't have ideas for life and how to live things, and for your job and for your home. And it doesn't mean that you don't make plans. What it means is that we need to learn to be content with whatever the Father has given us or allotted to us as we continue to work towards these things. And that takes a different mindset. The goal is not to get the things. The goal is serving Yahweh while I am working through life and acquiring things. It's like Yeshua said, he knows that you need things to live, right? But that's not your goal in life. It's not your purpose in life. It's to acquire the things. Your goal and purpose in life is the kingdom and to serve Yahweh, and he'll do these other things. He put it this way: seek first the kingdom of God, his righteousness, then all these things will be added to you, right? So again, it's a matter of perspective. It's a matter of what is truly important and what is secondary, right? Okay, so what is our perspective of our situations? Our perspective on our life, they can help us or they can hinder our daily lives in relationship with Yahweh. In other words, what we're focusing on in place of Yahweh it can be a detriment to us. Are we focusing on his word, his life, his promises, all the things that Yahweh has given us? If we're putting something else in that place, it can be detrimental to our lives and possibly those around us as well. So we need to make sure that our focus in our life is Yahweh, and then these other things will come in after that. Question is, How many times did Israel grumble in the wilderness? Right? Now, time and time again, right? The whole book of Numbers is just one big grumble. It's all just complaining, right? But yet this teaches us something, because we need to learn that we can't live life that same way. We have to be thankful for where the Father has us, knowing that we're here for a purpose. Let's do what we need to do here, learn what we need to learn here, so that we can move on and continue in what the Father has for us. Okay? Because truth be told, when life doesn't go like we think it should, many people really fall apart. That's when we need to learn to really trust on Yahweh, right? Is that, we have ways of life. Life needs to be this way, and this has to be done at this time, and this is how this is supposed to go, right? This is how my life is supposed to be. Let's ask a question. How many of you are really, truly 100% where you thought you would be in your life by now? Now, I'm not saying that it's bad where you're at. I'm just saying, when you were 10 years old, and you had a plan for your life, are you there? Probably not. Why? Because life changes, and goals change, and things that are important to you changes, right? So if we keep Yahweh at the center, or at the very midst, or the thing that we're looking for, right? Him, his kingdom, his life, then all the other things will be a little more flexible, and we'll learn to be able to follow through, be content with where he has us in this, right? And that would alleviate a lot of the grumbling and the complaining and what we have to do. Let's take a look at this. Luke 6:45. Yeshua says, "The good person out of the good treasure of his heart produces good, and the evil person out of the evil treasure produces evil. For out of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaks." Again, we see in Matthew 6:21-23, it says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Now look at this. The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. So if then that light in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? I know this is used in a context of being stingy or being generous, is how this is kind of used for the idiom. But again, look at that. It says, so if there's light in your eye. Again, it kind of has the idea of that menorah. We're approaching his light, to have his light facing our face, right? Looking at one another, his light shining towards us, then we would be generous. And it does affect how we live our life. So do we have his light in us, living through us? Are we looking up? Are we allowing ourselves to walk righteously? Isn't that what Yahweh said? He said, "I freed you from Egypt so that you can walk upright, so that you can live righteously." Okay? So that's what he's done for us. And we can't do that if we're trying to continually, dig a hole so we can go deeper into a despair. We need to look up so that we can stand and walk in what the Father has for us here. Okay? Let's look at a couple things here. Numbers 11, verses 1 through 10 is what we're going to look at. Verse 1, "So the people complained in the hearing of the Lord about their misfortunes. And when Yahweh heard it, his anger was kindled, and the fire of Yahweh burned among them and consumed some of the outlying parts of the camp. And the people cried out to Moshe, and Moshe prayed to the Lord, and the fire died down. So the name of the place was called Torah, because the fire of Yahweh burned among them." Now, what I want to point out here is just a couple things. One, it says they complained about their misfortunes. They complained about the life that they were living, right? Now, this isn't just, I'm not happy. Okay, this is bitter complaining. So they ain't happy, and buddy, everybody's going to know about it, right? They did not like where they were. I mean, honestly, who really wants to spend a whole lot of time out in the wilderness, out in the desert, But Yahweh said this is where he brought them to reveal himself to them, to have this relationship with them, to reaffirm covenant, and to teach them to trust him, right? So they're bitterly complaining, right? And it says these are the ones who were on the outlying parts of the camp. These are the ones who were on the outskirts of the camp, not the ones that are really close to the tabernacle, not even the ones that are a little further back in the camp. These are the ones out on the outskirts of the camp. They're not fully in, they're not fully out. They're following, along with Israel, but they're not really willing to be a part of Israel. right? So they're not really in what is happening, but they're still along for the ride. They're still along with, still wanting to be a part of, but they're not wanting the responsibility to live in the presence of the tabernacle. Okay, so that's really reveals a lot about the heart, the condition that's going on there. But so they start really complaining, and what are some of the things that happens there? So the fire breaks out. In Deuteronomy 29:18, it says, "Beware lest there be among you a man or a woman, a clan or a tribe whose heart is turning away today from Yahweh your God to go and serve the gods of those nations. Beware lest there be among you a root bearing," look at this, "poisonous and bitter fruit." Again, this is talking about the issue of the heart, talking about your desires and are you going to follow Yahweh or not. And it says this bitter root is going to be there. Hebrews puts it this way, chapter 12, verse 14 and 15. "Strive for peace with everyone and for the holiness without which no one will see the Lord. See to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and by it many become defiled." Again, this root of bitterness that if we allow it to get a hold of our life, we'll be bitter and it'll really affect everything in our life, but it won't stop there. Okay, it's going to want to spread and infect other people, and that's where there's a lot of problem. Okay, let's keep going. Numbers 11, verse 4. "So now the rabble that was among them had a strong craving, and the people of Israel also wept again and said, 'Oh, that we had meat to eat.' And remember the fish we ate in Egypt that cost us nothing, really cost us nothing. The cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. But now our strength is dried up, and there is nothing at all but this manna to look at." Now the manna was like coriander seed, and its appearance like that of bdellium. Verse 8, "So the people went about and gathered it and ground it in the handmills or beat it in mortars, boiled it in pots, made cakes of it, and the taste of it was like the taste of cakes baked with oil. And when the dew fell upon the camp in the night, so the manna fell with it." So the thing is, so now that they have manna, now that Yahweh is providing for them and giving them everything they need to survive life out here in the wilderness, they're perfectly content with their life, right? No. No, they're not. So what happens next? In verse 10, "Moses heard the people weeping throughout their clans, everyone at the door of his tent, and the anger of Yahweh blazed hotly, and Moshe was displeased." The big thing we need to learn here is to stop complaining about Yahweh has given us. Okay? He has us in certain areas in life, and things to go through, things to learn, and a lot of times things just happen just because of this. Let's live it. Face it, we live in a fallen world. You know, we work for people who don't care about righteousness, who don't care about holiness. There's people in the world that aren't trying to pursue Yahweh. So there's a lot of stuff that can happen. But what do we do with that is the issue. Complaining doesn't fix anything. Okay? Now, recognizing there's a problem and then trying to work and bring the resolution, trying to fix, just think, that's something different. But just complaining, that doesn't fix anything. And that can lead to other things. Because once we start complaining, this is a monster that never gets satisfied. Okay? It just continues to grow and grow and grow. And that's what leads to this bitterness and resentment and all of these things, right? Now, again, I'm not saying that if there's a problem, don't address it. Or I'm not saying just ignore something or just turn away from something. What I'm saying is, are we trying to work restoratively and redemptively and trying to do the right thing? Or are we just complaining? See, and that really reveals us, where we're at, all right? So the point here I want to make is that a critical spirit, no matter who it is fixated on, will hinder your life. The problem is not the circumstances. It's your heart and your perspective of yourself and those around you. That's why we see in Philippians 4:11, it says, "Not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation to complain. No. I have learned that in whatever situation, to be content." You know, Rav Shaul said, "I know what it means to have more than enough, and I know what it means to have nothing." He said, "I've learned no matter where I'm at to be content." That doesn't mean that, wherever you are, you're just going to have to take it. No, you make a plan, you work through life, you try to better yourself, but don't allow this bitterness and resentment for where you at keep you from moving forward. Okay. Be content where you're at, but keep walking with Yahweh. Because who knows what tomorrow holds? Nobody knows what tomorrow holds. So walk, live your life, work towards Him, focus on His kingdom, and then He'll take you into tomorrow, right? Okay. So speaking of a critical spirit or being judgmental, we'll address that. Once you give way to a critical or a judgmental heart, it doesn't matter who you're speaking about. No one is exempt or safe from your criticism. You know, you'll talk bad about anybody and everybody, right? There are those who criticize others and they're judgmental toward them, which leads to them being rejected. And because they're rejected, they mistake this rejection as a badge of honor and wear it with pride. Like, well, they rejected Yeshua, they rejected, Rav Shaul, the Apostle Paul, and they rejected all the prophets. So being rejected is a mark that God approves, right? No, it is not. Okay. I know the scripture says, well, they hated Yeshua and we'll be hated as well. But, let's not live our life offensively. The word of Yahweh is an offense to many people. A stone of stumbling, a rock of offense, kind of a thing. When the word comes to when the word comes to us and tells us we need to change, we need to repent, we need to turn away from the way we live life and turn towards Yahweh. Many people don't like to hear stuff like that, but it is something that we need to do. Now, the question is how we do it. We can affect how we do it. So are we looking around and seeing the life of others and trying to say, where can we help? Or are we looking around and just talking about everybody because they're not doing it right? See, there is a difference, right? There is a difference. 1 Peter 2:11-12. It says, Beloved, I urge you as sojourners and exiles to abstain from the passions of the flesh which wage war against your soul. Keep your conduct among the Gentiles, or that's in the nations, honorable, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of His visitation. In other words, let your actions, your conduct, your speech be in such a way that they really can't do too much about it. Really can't do anything to you. Good example is Daniel, right? Can you imagine? The worst thing they could find on Daniel is he prayed 3 times a day facing Jerusalem. That was the worst they could find on him? That's what they had to use to try to, get the king on him, to throw him on the lion's den, is that he prayed 3 times a day. I mean, he was a righteous man, but they couldn't get him on anything, so they had to fabricate something, make something happen, circumstances, so that they could throw him in the lion's den. But what happened? Yahweh delivered him, right? That's kind of what we're talking about. Let your life be in such a way that even if they don't like you, they really can't say anything about you. They would have to be lying to do so, right? That is how we need to live. We need to live our life as examples of what Yahweh desires here in the earth, examples of His kingdom, His life, His ways here, which is righteousness, justice, peace, joy, right? Okay. James puts it this way. James 4, verses 10-12. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will exalt you. Do not speak evil against one another, brothers. So the one who speaks against a brother or judges his brother speaks evil against the law and judges the law. But if you judge the law, you are not a doer of the law, but a judge. And there is only one lawgiver and judge, He who is able to save and destroy. Who are you to judge your neighbor? The idea here is, many of us can say, well, but the scripture tells us to judge. We'll address that here in just a minute. But we don't really do it the way that we're supposed to. And furthermore, has Yahweh set all of us over judges over everybody? No, not really. Again, there are those in the assemblies who were set up in places to make judgments, to discern situations, and to do the mishpatim, right? Mishpatim is judgments, to say this needs to be handled in this situation. But just to go out and just to make judgments towards people, that's not what the Father's called us to do. Okay? Let's look at this. We need to speak the truth, absolutely, but we need to speak the truth in love. Okay. Are we trying to speak the truth to people because, well, I'm right and they need to know it because they're wrong? Or are we speaking the truth because we care? Because we love what Yahweh loves, because we love his people. We don't want to see people perish. We don't want to see people hurting. So we need to speak the truth, but we need to do it out of love. And that really affects how it's done. Your motive really comes through. In Ephesians 4:15-16, it says, "Speak the truth in love, and we are to grow up in every way to him who is the head, into Messiah, from whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped, when each part is working properly, makes the body grow so that it builds itself up in love." So is what we're doing, the things that we're saying, our actions, our behavior, is it doing things to help build up and bring the body together? Or are we just trying to do things so that the body is constantly fighting each other? The different parts of the body are at war with each other, so that it's destroying itself and not actually living the way it's supposed to be living. See, these are the things that we need to stop and take a look at and address ourselves. And this affects our lives day to day, because it does affect how we talk to one another, how we speak to one another, how we have daily relationships with one another. All of these things are things we have to consider in our lives. Even this grumbling and complaining and all these things that are happening, nobody's exempt from this. We're all susceptible to it, but we do find that in Israel, it really spread into the camp and even affected those closest to Moshe as well, right? Look at this, Numbers 12, verse 1 and 2. "Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moshe because of the Cushite woman that he had married, for he had married a Cushite woman. And they said, 'Has Yahweh indeed spoken only through Moshe, only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us also?' And Yahweh heard it." Okay, so there's a lot of different ways you can take this. One way is they can say, much like Korah, right, which we read about later, much like Korah when he comes out, says, "Moses, you take too much on yourselves. We are all holy people." It's like, well, we all hear from God too. Who do you think you are? You can't tell us what to do, right? That's really what's happening here? Maybe, maybe not. I do want to offer another point of view, another opinion on this, okay? There's a few commentaries out and talk about Miriam and why this was being said, and I gave it even down to why Miriam was put outside the camp and Aaron wasn't, is down to they really look down at the verbiage and the usage of the words and the different things that are happening here in the scripture. Like it says Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses, where it says they spoke against Moses. That's actually in a feminine form, so it's kind of like Miriam took the lead on it. I mean, there's really a lot to consider, and the truth is we don't really know 100% why, because God never said, but we can get some ideas in the situation, right? It doesn't really change what happened. It just means we may or may not have a better understanding of it. One of these areas is this. It is believed that Miriam was speaking on behalf of Moses' wife, not speaking against her. Why would we think something like that? Because Moshe had to go to the tent of meeting whenever Yahweh called, which meant he had to be on call essentially 24/7, right? Any day, anytime Yahweh can say, "Hey, Moshe, come meet with me," and he would go. Now, here's the issue. If Moshe had become in a state of unclean, he couldn't go into the tent. He couldn't go in to meet with Yahweh, which meant there are things that he would have to exempt himself from. Now, without being graphic, let's just say marital relations makes a person unclean. It is not a sin, but they were unclean until sundown. They would mikvah, go through a baptism, wash, and then at sundown they would be clean for the next day. Okay? Well, if Moshe was unclean, he couldn't go in to meet with Yahweh. So what we're looking at here is possibly Moshe was living with his wife, but living as single, so to speak. And so Miriam could have been speaking up on behalf of Moses' wife, saying, he's neglecting her. Why is he doing this? We heard from God too. Why can't we go and speak with God when Moses can't? See, and the thing is, when Yahweh then came down there and said, "Hey, you three, my office, I want to talk to you," right? And he told them, with Moshe, I don't speak like I speak to others. To others I speak, in dreams and visions, dark sayings, these other things. With Moshe, I speak mouth to mouth. Literally, it says mouth to mouth in the Hebrew. But he doesn't do that with anyone else. Okay? So again, is the issue really what they said, or was it the fact that it was done wrong? And it could be any of this or all of this, right? This is just something to put out just for you to think about. What I'm getting at is that Miriam and Aaron were speaking about Moses instead of speaking to Moses. And who knows if there would have been others around to possibly overhear the situation. We don't know. It doesn't say. What we do say is that they were speaking about him and criticizing him, and he wasn't there. So they weren't speaking to him. And that is a problem. Okay, and that is something that Yahweh does not bode well with, right? We need to resolve situations. If there is a problem, if there is a situation, does Scripture tell us to go talk about them to others? Or does it say go talk to them? And that's what we need to look at. Example, Matthew 18:15-17 says, if your brother sins against you, go tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you have gained your brother. But if he does not listen to you, take one or two others along with you, that every charge may be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. And if he refuses to listen to them, then tell it to the church. If he refuses to listen even to the church, then let him be you as a Gentile tax collector. The things I'm getting at here is that if something happens, you go to them first, and then if that doesn't work, then you were supposed to get witnesses. Now, the idea of witnesses, it's not just a matter of, I'm taking my brothers or my cousins or my friends with me so they can see my side of the situation. No, when it says witnesses, it's implying that so there is a situation that happened, other people were there who saw it, and you're taking them with you to do that. It's not like I'm going to you saying what this guy did to me, and we're going to go talk to him. See, that's not what it's getting at. Okay, it's getting at the idea of something had happened. There were witnesses there, and you grab the witnesses. You go to him to be a witness to the fact that you are trying to make restoration with them. And then if that doesn't work, then you go to the community. And it doesn't again say go spread it around the community. It says go to the assembly, which implies to go to the leaders within the assembly, and let that be established. There again, it's all about order, and not everybody needs all the details. Guys, as much as people love to hear it, not everybody needs all the details. So moving on, Proverbs 27:6 says that the wounds from a friend are received as well meant, but an enemy's kisses are insincere. If your brother comes to you and says there's a problem, or look, there's something going on in your life that I'm seeing and you really need to look at changing it. If we do that, so if someone is coming to us because they care, even if we don't like what is being said, we're more inclined to hear them. Okay, or at least to consider it even after the fact, once our emotions get out of the way, right? That's the point. If someone is speaking to you because they care, you're more likely to consider where they're coming from. And it's not just a matter of coming to beat you because, you messed up, all right? That affects it. So there is a difference between judging and being judgmental. It's kind of what we're getting at. There's a difference between judging and being judgmental. 1 Corinthians 5:12-13 says, what business is it of mine to judge outsiders? Isn't it those who are part of the community that you should be judging? So God will judge those who are outside. Just expel the evildoer from among yourselves. Again, this goes to the situation of if a brother sins against you, you go to them, you talk to them, then take witnesses, and then go to the assembly, right? This is something within our communities, within our assemblies. We should be able to talk to one another and to handle one another in these areas, right? And it says, why do we need to go to outside courts or worldly courts or earthly courts when we have the true measure of righteousness and justice, right? The problem comes into when we're not willing to listen to anybody and we're just going to do it our way, right? Okay, so there is a difference that we're looking at here. And then we find in John 7:24, it says, do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment. And this is where we say, see, we're supposed to judge, but look at the context of the whole thing. Okay, Matthew 7, it says, judge not that you be not judged. For with the judgment that you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye when there's a log in your own eye? Says, you hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. The thing here that we're looking at is we need to examine ourselves first. Okay. And many of us say, well, I don't have a problem with that, so I can speak judgment to that, whatever is going on in someone else's life. But someone can do the same to you, because again, none of us are perfect, and we can't approach one another in that way. Again, I'm not saying that we don't try to help each other and don't try to help correct one another. And we do have a responsibility to do that, to help each other out when we've missed it, because maybe we're having problems and don't understand how to do something, right? We need to help each other. But again, what's the motive and what's being done? Are we just trying to say, oh, no, you got this problem, so we come down on them hard, and we're not willing to actually try to help them in the situation? See, that's not what Yeshua is telling us to do, right? We got to examine ourselves first. The question is, how do we interact with others? Are we always pointing a finger at someone? Are we critical, condescending? Are we unforgiving, manipulative? Are we self-centered, condemning? That's a good one. Not conviction, not bringing conviction, but condemning one another. Do we demand that others comply with our opinions and then shun everybody who disagrees with us? These are really good marks of a judgmental or critical heart within someone. It's we got to understand, people, we need to give people room to disagree with us, because that's how we all grow, right? That's how we all learn, is looking at something from a different standpoint. It doesn't mean we have to agree, and it doesn't mean we have to do things this way, but we do need to learn the heart of the Father in the midst of all that, right? Galatians 5:14. For the whole of the law is fulfilled in one word: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. But if you bite and devour one another, watch out that you are not consumed by one another. But I say, walk in the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh. For these are opposed to each other, to keep you from doing the things that you want to do. Verse 18. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. And then again, these are the phrasing under the law is like under the penalty of the law, right? That's what we're looking at. Verse 19. So now the works of the flesh are evident: sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and things like these. I warn you, as I warned before, that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. And again, you really want to see what's going on in someone's life, tell them, well, I don't agree with that. And I'm not even saying to do it in a mean way. I'm just say, well, I don't agree with that. See what happens. Right? Let's keep going. Verse 22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things, there is no law. So what we're looking at here, if we're looking around and always trying to point out everybody else's faults and shortcomings, we need to examine our heart. We need to examine where we're really coming from. Because are we really trying to help others and trying to keep each other on the path and trying to keep each other looking toward the Father? Or are we just trying to tear each other up? Are we truly tearing apart the body in the name of Yahweh? And no, we can't do that. All right? We need to build up. We need to be people to help build his kingdom, and that means help build up one another so that we can all learn to work together. Are we trying to build up or tear down, right? Matthew 12:30, so, Yeshua says, whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters. We need to be people to gather in, which means we need to be willing to be around one another. We need to be willing to work together. 1 Corinthians 12:25, there may be no division in the body, but that the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together. If one member is honored, all rejoice together. Now you are the body of Messiah and individually members of it. You are part of a body. So are we being a productive part of the body, trying to help build the body up, trying to help it do what it's supposed to do, live how it's supposed to live? Or are we rogue cells within the body trying to destroy the body? Think about it, right? So where should our focus be? Where should our heart be? And as we're looking up to Yahweh, what are some things to keep in mind about this? Let's look at a few more verses. Micah 6:8 says, He has told you, O man, what is good, and what does Yahweh require of you? But to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. Romans 12:1-5 says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. Verse 4. For as in one body we have many members, and the functions do not all have the same function. So we, though many, are one body in Messiah and individually members of one another. That's where we're coming from when we do that, right? So again, this is part of laying our life down for the greater, we're putting ourselves in to Yahweh. And as we do that, we're going to realize that we're part of his people as a collective, right? Psalm 1:1-3. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of Yahweh, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither, and all he does, he prospers. Lastly, Colossians 3:2 says, Set your minds on things that are above and not on things that are on earth. We need to live here, but we need to live for his kingdom. We need to live for the heart of the Father. Because can you imagine the world that we would live in and what life would be like if all of us really cared about what Yahweh wanted to do? If we truly wanted to walk with him and did it the way that he said to do it, right? That is something we need to learn. We need to learn there's going to be many different things along the way, and even within people that we're walking with and going together, you're going to have disagreements from time to time, and let's be honest, you're going to upset one another from time to time. There's going to be offenses that come. There's going to be misunderstandings. There's going to be miscommunications. There's going to be things that are going to happen. That's just life. It's going to happen because none of us are the same, identical people. We all have our own thoughts. We all have our own perspectives. We all have our own ways we look at things. Words have meanings, and we all have different ideas of what those meanings are. It's going to happen. But what do we do when it does happen? Okay, do we try to work for the greater good? Do we try to work restoratively, redemptively, honorably, being mindful we are a holy people? Or does the old nature and the old man come out and the gloves come off, right? Kind of thing. No, we need to learn to work with one another, even in the midst of hardship, even in the midst of misunderstandings and miscommunications and everything that happens. We need to learn to work with one another and to show the heart of the Father in all of it. Just be mindful that when we're approaching him and his light is shining on us, look up. Be mindful of heaven, the kingdom of heaven and his ways, and let that light shine as you go into the world. Let that light, like John 1 says, that he is the light that is life. He is the light that is in men. So let that light shine through you so that we can have an impact in the world around us, and for the better, right? To show life in his kingdom and his ways. All right, guys, I hope that this teaching, I hope it encourages you. I hope it challenges you and causes us to think a little bit. All right. So until next time, be blessed and shalom.